with Trump Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who faces allegations of having committed or overseen a war crime. And against that backdrop, a new internal Pentagon report, which is done by these watchdogs. You may remember Trump ousted many of them. You may remember the reports and the concerns from lawyers and nonpartisan legal experts about why you need those watchdogs in government, totally apart from whether you voted for or like a given administration. Well, here's an example of a watchdog doing its work, because while it appears that Mr. Hegseth did not participate or cooperate meaningfully, and we'll get to that, the watchdog at the Pentagon has found that nonetheless, based on the evidence they gathered, he put his employees, service members, at risk. And that's in a scandal you might remember, the intelligence failures and mistakes committed by Hegseth and others in what they called Signalgate, for the name of the app they used. So this is the Inspector General report. It centers around the messages sent from high-ranking Trump national security officials. That included the vice president, the CIA director, the then national security advisor, and others. At the time, they were discussing U.S. strikes in Yemen. These messages were sent on this secret app, Signal, which, as a reminder, is something that civilians and random people sometimes use for a layer of security, although the government can tell you Signal is not like magic. You can get a hold of Signal chats, as these people ultimately found. And remember, they have a lot more secure material available to them that apparently they just flouted and didn't use. Now, the initial mistake that teed this off was a journalist, the Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg, who was added to the chat. An unclassified version of the Watchdog report is set to come out tomorrow, but we're already getting glimpses of it, and it's going to Congress. There's a source who has knowledge of the report and tells MS Now that it found Hegseth put the operations and service people at risk with his Signal mistake. Hegseth sent messages that included information about targets, weapons that the U.S. would be deploying, and attack sequencing according to the information we initially already had from the Atlantic. Sources also say that Hegseth refused an interview request and would not turn over his phone. So you have this kind of watchdog investigation, and then you have, of course, powerful people who sometimes flout it. But again, for someone who was just using Signal willy-nilly, the question is, if he would send these messages, including accidentally or not to a reporter, why wouldn't he trust or cooperate with his own Pentagon team to get to the bottom of this? And by the way, people in government are humans. Humans make mistakes. If you make a mistake, that is, you don't try to leak information, you're not trying to hurt the troops, but you made a mistake and now you want to clean it up and say, hey, let's not do that again. Well, the usual proper course would be to cooperate confidentially with your own Pentagon investigation. Address the problem, put together preventive measures, and move forward. According to the reporting we have, and we'll update it as we get it, Hegseth did not do that, did not cooperate. And the report finds he violated department policy. That is, of course, the ongoing sort of runway on a story that made big waves when it first happened so long ago. Then there is the very recent story where the probes are just getting started of an alleged war crime that was conducted under Hegseth's leadership. Who might ultimately be held responsible for that is, of course, an intricate military and legal question. A reminder, of course, the military is, in our country, governed by its own uniform code of military justice. There is a different legal system, if you saw A Few Good Men, that oversees that, separate from, say, just the random federal courts that others deal in. And so there will be a real military legal investigation here if the process works. And then there is also Congress, which currently has calls from Democrats and Republicans to get to the bottom of this, to interview the necessary individuals. And some saying Hegseth has lost confidence and may ultimately have to leave this office. If you go over to conservative media, the Murdoch-owned Wall Street Journal says Hegseth must, of course, testify under oath about this, while the commanding officer, Admiral Mitch Brady, will be giving a classified briefing to lawmakers tomorrow. Hegseth has faced criticism for his odd public and at times, frankly, Orwellian messages that he's rushed to post about Bradley. You know, this is often a very content-oriented social media type cabinet. And so he rushed onto social media platforms and X to post things that seem to pin the blame on this individual while also claiming to take some sort of higher ground. Quote, Admiral Bradley's an American hero, a true professional, and has my 100% support. Fine, but look at the next part. I stand by him in the combat decisions he has made. on the September 2nd mission and on all others since. That phrasing has roiled the Pentagon and plenty of military allies who look at it as, in the middle of this process and investigation, the secretary jumping out to say he made these calls as if there was no oversight. Of course, we have civilian oversight of the military in this country, and currently that is done by Pete Hegseth. His argument is this is the fog of war. Many people have pointed out there is no declared war. Congress has certainly not voted to authorize a war. You would have noticed if that happened. And so the administration finds itself stretched very far on this very regrettable, probable tragedy. Stretched from a war they have not declared or gotten legal authority for, all the way out to these operations that, when they go a certain way, the Pentagon and the Trump media machine are quick to basically push out as a kind of video content to show what they're doing against perhaps drug boats. We don't know. You need to check the evidence on each one. And against the wider foreign threats that they say are so central to their priorities. But stretched across that is a question of whether they committed a clear war crime by doing something that is very clearly banned. Everyone who's ever practiced law or been in the military knows about this. You don't shoot down innocent parachuters, even if they were moments ago waging war, because they become people that you try to lawfully take control of as combatants, as prisoners of war, but you don't go around executing people. And that's war. Remember what I said. They're stretched way away from war because these weren't uniformed foreign adversaries of some other country. These are boats full of people who, if they're doing bad things, can be caught and dealt with like normal, but aren't engaged in war against us as a factual matter.
And it's a catastrophe. I think Pete Hegseth, it's impossible to imagine that he survives this as Secretary of Defense. I think he must resign, and I think Republicans will ask for that ultimately once they investigate this. But this is a disaster for this generation of people serving in the United States military. And that is a tragedy more than a farce.
A tragedy more than a farce. Lives have already been lost. Some of them, according to the evidence emerging, were people that should not, under our laws of war, have been killed, period. Who is responsible for that? In the gravest sense, morally and legally, is a process question. It is not something that can be resolved by one video or one leak or one article. But as Rachel put it there, it is the type of catastrophe that has a lot riding on it right now. I've got special guests. We're back on this in 90 seconds.